MC3 Tool 14 Advanced Control for the closure seal. Preventing last-minute drift by stabilizing meaning at the moment it is most fragile. Every conversation ends, but not every conversation truly closes. Many interactions stop without sealing meaning. Others end with small uncertainties that feel too minor to raise. Some conclude with goodwill but unspoken assumptions. And far too many finish with both parties believing clarity exists, only for misalignment to surface later, once the conversation is no longer being held together. This is where miscommunication most often begins, not at the start of a conversation, but at its end. The closure seal exists because clarity at the moment of closing determines clarity in everything that follows. It ensures that meaning does not soften, fragment, or drift once the interaction has finished and the relationship is no longer actively regulating interpretation. Why endings are uniquely vulnerable? Endings create a cognitive and emotional shift. Relief sets in. Attention loosens. Precision fades. People want to conclude politely and move on. In this softened state, assumptions replace confirmation. Clients say yes to be agreeable. Professionals interpret warmth as alignment. Cultural norms discourage final clarification because it feels confrontational or unnecessary. Linguistic fatigue sets in. Emotional harmony becomes more important than accuracy. Without an intentional seal, meaning becomes vulnerable the moment the conversation ends. Drift happens after the conversation, not during it. Post-conversation drift occurs quietly. Instructions are reinterpreted later. Deadlines soften in memory. Nuance is lost when stakeholders retell the conversation through their own cultural or organizational filters. Emotional tone fades, leaving behind a simplified, and often distorted, version of what was agreed. By the time drift becomes visible, the conversation is no longer present to correct it. The closure seal prevents this by anchoring meaning before the container dissolves. This is not a summary. The closure seal is not a recap, checklist, or procedural close. Those are mechanical. This control is relational and cognitive. It ensures that the meaning you leave with is the meaning the client carries forward, emotionally, conceptually, and operationally. It creates finality without rigidity. It completes the interaction without making it feel clinical. Multilingual fragility at the point of closure. In multilingual conversations, endings are especially delicate. Processing in a second or third language is exhausting. By the final minutes, clients may be operating on trust rather than comprehension. They agree because they believe alignment exists, not because they have verified it internally. The closure seal compensates for this fatigue. It ensures the version of meaning the client leaves with is robust enough to survive translation, memory, and retelling. Cultural complexity at the close. Cultural norms shape how conversations end. Some cultures expect explicit next steps. Others prioritize harmony. Some surface concerns at the last moment. Others suppress them to preserve respect. Without a deliberate closing control, these norms reshape meaning after the fact. The closure seal embeds clarity in a way that respects cultural variation without allowing it to distort agreement. Emotion at the moment of release. Emotion changes at the end of a conversation. Relief replaces focus. Tension dissolves. People want to exit gracefully. This emotional lightness is precisely what allows misunderstandings to slip through unnoticed. The closure seal reintroduces just enough presence to prevent that slippage, not by prolonging the interaction, but by completing it fully. How the closure seal works. You do not repeat the conversation. You do not correct the client. You do not re-explain details. You anchor. The closure seal sounds natural, warm, and human. It confirms shared direction rather than enforcing agreement. It stabilizes meaning so that it cannot be unintentionally rewritten once the conversation ends. Why this control protects the future. Weak endings create future work, clarification emails, follow-up calls, repairs to misunderstanding, erosion of trust. Strong endings prevent that work from being necessary. When the closure seal is used consistently, follow-up becomes clean. Projects flow. Clients trust not because they were reassured, but because outcomes match expectations. What happens over time? Clients begin to close conversations differently with you. They confirm meaning themselves. They ask final questions without embarrassment. They repeat key points voluntarily. They leave interactions not with polite uncertainty, but with quiet confidence. The relationship becomes more efficient and more honest, not because you control it, but because you protect it. When tools become instinct. Used mechanically, tools feel like techniques. Used with awareness, they become acts of leadership. Over time, something subtle occurs. The tools stop feeling external. Your communication begins to carry steadiness, precision, and emotional intelligence naturally. Mastery arrives quietly, the moment someone finds clarity they didn't know they needed, and you realize the system is now working through you.